Our assumption for coal increases over the next 5 years would be an average coal increase of 10%. And it's important that we work with the mining industry to make sure that that is achieved, because that's the biggest part and input to electricity prices. If coal goes up higher than inflation, electricity prices will go up higher than inflation. And so that's crucially important that we normalize the situation and contain coal costs to not more than 10%. The infrastructure growth is imperative for the country. We're not investing for us, we're investing for South Africa. The S&P downgrade of Eskom follows the downgrade of the government, because we're very closely linked and the government supports Eskom. And the impact essentially would be on access to funding, where would you get access, and secondly on the cost of funding. And it's crucially important in order for us to maintain an investment grade rating, to have access to funding and to make sure it's efficient, and to allow us to then invest in the future of South Africa.
Could you just maybe enlighten us on some of the preventative methods perhaps that Eskom might put into place to ensure that there aren't any further downgradings going forward, perhaps in the near future?
Like I said, we're very closely linked, not just us, but most companies in South Africa. Most of our customer base is in South Africa. So any impact on the country's rating would have an impact on Eskom. From our side, what we can do is to make sure that we have a long-term tariff path that is certain, a regulatory environment that is clear, that is independent and stable. The regulatory agencies look at that very importantly. And that will allow us to have certainty around tariffs, and that will allow us to give certainty to investors as to how we would repay the debt that we've borrowed. On our side, what we have to do is make sure we look at operational efficiencies, how the cost increases, and that we deliver against our plans. And I think those are the key things that we have to look at as Eskom.
There are economists who expect that electricity tariffs will reflect increases of up to 200% cumulatively. This after they've seen increases of about 91% since 2005. This is on a cumulative basis, of course. With the above inflation rate increments that we are seeing, would that perhaps, is it a concern of Eskom that could have a bearing on economic growth?
Yeah, certainly the tariff increases above inflation would have an impact on inflation and similarly also with economic growth. But the most crucial thing is to make sure that we continuously invest in new infrastructure, not to constrain economic growth. That's important. That's priority number one. And the reason why you have seen since 2005 or 7 these increases is because for more than 2 decades, we did not invest in new capacity. We had electricity prices lower than inflation. And all you're doing now is a correction of that. And so it's very important going forward that we do not make the same mistake again, and make sure tariffs reflects the costs of current production and the investment costs to attract both investment from Eskom, but more increasingly from the private sector.